Hi guys, it's Jody from Marjet Creations, and I thought I would just pop on today and give you a quick demonstration on how I make these tag sets. I've sold out of them on my shop, so I'm creating a few more to post today. So this is just a sample. The stitching didn't go very well. I had problems with my machine, so this is my template. But it's just a little pocket tag. It's got a little mini tag on the inside, and it's using distress inks to get this technique, and it's just stitched around the edge. So I will just walk you through the process that I have done to create these. Of course, when they're done, they're going to have some ribbon on both tags just to finish them off. All right, so the first thing I do is I start with my 2 tag bases. And I just trim them to the size that I want, and I clip the corners. So that's all I do, quite simple. And then what I do is I bring in my distress inks. So this is a Tim Holtz Broken China that I'll be using. I'm also going to be using the Worn Lipstick. I don't know if you can see that. And the last one I'm going to be using is the Peeled Paint. So 2 of them, the pink and the green, are the distress oxides, and the blue is just the distress ink. So I'm going to start with the large tag, and I'm just going to make a pattern on the tag. I'm working on glass here, so it smudges really well. I can go off the edge, and I'll try not to shake the camera too much. I'm going to try and get as much ink as I can on. And I'm not too concerned about the pattern. So it's raining here again today. The weather is not very nice. So I've stuck a roast in the slow cooker for supper, and just kind of having a relaxing day. Doing some of that. My daughter, who's 16, is going for her license today, so that should be happening in the next little bit. So her dad's taking her there, and so hopefully all goes well with that. While I have the blue out, I'm also going to grab the tag. I don't know if you can see on the little tag, there's some blue down the middle. So I'm going to do that while I have this ink out. So with the distress inks and oxides, you can stamp with them, you can blend with them, you can put them on a non-porous surface and spray them, and then dab your projects into them just to get different looks. I'll maybe try and do some tutorials on that another day. So now I'm just going to grab my pink, and on my large tag, I'm going to fill in the spaces here. Both these inks react with water, and they react slightly different. So I don't know if you can tell, but this oxide that I'm using is an opaque ink, where the distress ink, the blue, is translucent. So they do react a little bit different, but you can use them together. The oxides, they layer a little bit better, where if you layer the distress inks too much, they do tend to go a little bit muddy. Okay, so we got that. I'm just going to take a wipe here and just clean up some of that ink that's on my table. And then I'm going to switch again to the green, and we'll go to the small tag here. So I did do a video yesterday. I did a video on doing some more tags and journaling sets, and unfortunately I had an issue with my phone and I've lost the entire video, so I won't be able to post that, which is too bad, but that's what happens. All right, so I'm just going to clean up my desk here just a little bit. Oops. Okay, so now we have the two bases. So at this point, what I would do is I would take my mister. So I just use the mini mister. This is a Ranger mini mister, but anyway, to get your water. And I just spray the tags. The amount of water and the amount of ink you have will determine how the tags end up. And I'm just going to set them aside, excuse my arm, just to dry. And again, I'll just clean up my desk. All right. So once they're dry, I have a couple here that are dry. You'll notice the different water stains. So you can tell here the different looks you get with the different inks. These ones oxidize, the oxide inks, which is the pink one here. So you get a little bit of white markings on that. And then here's the small tag that's dry, and again, you get that kind of look. So the next step I'm going to do to get these tags ready is I'm going to take my background stamp. I'm using this stamp here. It's just a recollection stamp, and it's, I don't know what it's called, but it's music paper. And I'm just going to ink it up just with some plain dye ink. This one's brown. Nothing fancy with this one. So I'm going to ink up my stamp. And I'm going to stamp this tag just to give it a little bit of interest, okay? So there you can see just a little bit of a background so it's not quite so plain. And then I'm going to take a sponge and I'm just going to go around the edges just to darken them up. Once I'm done with the video tutorial, I will take this to the sewing machine and stitch around it as well. Where with the tag base, I did a zigzag. With this one, I'll most likely just do a straight stitch. And I will use a brown thread just to enhance this border that I'm giving it now. This one's quite a subtle border, so the stitching around it will just kind of finish it off. All right, so there's that, and I have one that was done before, so there's a couple different ones. So those are the little tags that are going to go inside. Now we have to make the pocket portion. So this is just a cut down portion, and I've used a stamp with some permanent ink, and then the distress inks I've used as watercolor ink. So here's my little square that I'm going to use. I'm going to lay it down there. Now for this process, you are going to want to make sure that you use a permanent ink. If you don't use a permanent ink, then when you go and use your distress inks to paint, you're going to smudge your ink. So you want to use a permanent ink, and then you can choose whatever stamp you want. So the stamp I'm using is a Stampin' Up stamp, and it's from the Common Garden set. So I'm just going to take it and I'm going to ink up my stamp. I'm going to ink it up pretty good. I'm just using a black permanent ink. And then we'll stamp it on the card here. Try and get it as centered as possible. Hold it down for a few seconds just to make sure that the ink comes on, and there's your stamped image. All right, so now what you're going to want to do is you want to add some color. So to do that, I'm just going to make sure my desk is clean here. I'm working on glass, like I said. So what I can do is I can just take my distress ink and I can put it directly on my glass. Then I'm going to take my spray bottle and I'm going to spray it. This is going to make it usable for me. Now, this is where I said that you can also take your tags and you can dip into them. But I am actually going to take a paintbrush and I'm going to dip into it, and then I can just paint. And I don't want it to look perfect because I want it to look like a watercolor. So I'm just painting around the flowers just to get some color in there. And it's not going to be a solid color, and that's exactly what I want. I want it to look like a watercolor. So just roughly go around the edges. Like I said, you can do this with any different stamps that you have. This one just kind of works for me. All right. Next, I want to do some of the leaves. So again, I don't need much ink. That might be enough. And spray it again. I have got a container of water on my left here, so I just cleaned my brush, and then I'm going to come back and pick up some of this ink. And again, I'm just going to go over the stems here and the leaves. I find that the more imperfect it is, the happier I am with it. There you go. I'm just going to give it a little bit of a shake just to dry it off a little bit. And then lastly, we're going to use the blue. Now remember, this is a different ink, so you can tell when I stamp it, because this isn't an oxide, it's translucent. So now for this one, I'm going to use a little bit bigger of a brush. And I'm just going to go around my image. So you can see this process is quite fast. I do want some of those markings that make it look like watercolor. I don't want it solid. The more imperfect it is, the happier I am. You can use a smaller brush to get around in there if you want. Depending how it dries, I might do that. Got some sponge. If you don't have a glass surface, I have used plastic packaging in order to put my paint on. I believe any non-porous surface will work, so. And these are just cheap paint brushes I have. There's nothing fancy about them. Obviously, the more water that you add, also the lighter the color wash that you're going to get. Okay, I'm just going to get my smaller brush because just get into some of these tighter spots. If you have too many defined lines, you can also dip your paintbrush in water and just kind of even them out a little bit. All right, guys, that is how simple it is to make watercolor designs with your distress inks. Now, once this dries, like I say, I'll be able to take this to the machine. I can stitch around my mini tag, add a topper, and I've got a cute little pocket tag. Very easy to do. Color combinations are endless. So I hope you enjoyed this video. These will be listed in my shop soon if you're interested. That's RJet Creations over on Etsy. The link will be in my YouTube information section. Thank you. Have a great day.